I want to discuss two main subjects, two documents. Action plan, global action plan on Steppe Eagle and Raptors. For you, if somebody would be ready to present this idea, and Jenny, please. And the next document will be national action plan for Kazakhstan, as we are in Kazakhstan now. Ну, пока у нас немножко техническое.
Well, we have some. Oh. Yes, sure.
Пока у нас небольшая.
Well, we have some technical. Oh, okay. Now ready.
Good afternoon, everybody. We've not got any slides because technology's not been helpful, as I'm sure you can all sympathise with. My name is Jenny Weston, and I work for the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, which is BirdLife UK, and I work in the Global Species Recovery team. Myself and Umberto wanted to raise the issue of having a global action plan for the Steppe Eagle. This was raised at the previous conference 5 years ago, and just wanted to kind of speak about what has happened since and what has happened more recently, and kind of potential next steps in development of a plan.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. So in 2018, the Raptor MOU received a letter from the previous conference calling for the establishment of an international working group to develop an action plan. What the Raptor MOU did, the coordinating unit, was to send a letter and inquire through the signatories if they were interested and were welcoming such an initiative, and if there were any financial support to do that. We sent it to 61, 62 range states. We received 40 answers in 2019. They all were very excited about the fact, but nobody was able to provide any financial support. Then, that was the end of 2019. Nick resigned in early 2020, and so the situation was not taken up. I took up the issue again with Moss. There has been interest again from a signatory to develop the international action plan. We don't still have resources, but now there might be some opportunity. I think that we need to do it. The process for having a document becoming a CMS document is the following. We need to establish a working group. We don't need to have the involvement of any authorization for CMS. We have the mandate. We need to find a coordinator who can regulate and organize and run the workshops and at least the work of the working group, start drafting a document. When we have an internal approval, endorsement of the working group of the action plan, we can send it to the signatories of the Raptor MOU or the parties within the distribution of the species. Then the document will have to go to the Scientific Council and eventually to COP. This is the process. To have a document approved by COP has to go to the Scientific Council, and the Scientific Council will recommend the adoption by the parties at the next COP. It will be in 3 years' time, because the COP this year is far too early. And at this COP, there will be already a call for an international action plan in one of the resolutions that will be tabled. So even not only the Raptor MOU, but also the CMS parties will call for that. So there will be a complete endorsement and mandate to do this. So I think we have now in a good position to pick up again the pieces from the last meeting, review what are the members that needs to be around the working group. The names at the time were mostly from the breeding areas. I think we need to involve the also areas during the migration areas and the wintering areas to expand the working group. We don't want a working group which is 55 people. We don't want a parliament. We need a group of dedicated experts to provide contents to the action plan. But before that, I would say that one of the commitment of the working group members would be also to pull together all this knowledge, and in particular the tracking and the mortality data, to really understand better what are the movement of these animals, what are the cause of mortality, and coming up with a common agreed document so there will not discussion or misunderstanding, misinterpretation, interpretation of the data. We have a common understanding of what are the threats, because the first point of an action plan is understanding what are the threats we need to address. So my call at the moment is to, one, please provide, send to me or Jenny the names of the people who wants to be in the working group. We will pick up the pieces and start working on that. And if somebody wants to be the coordinator, we can talk about that. At the moment, we don't have resources. We will look to have at some stage a physical meeting. But we have been working for 3 years on online meetings and electronic communication, and a working group can work very effectively on that. So we don't need a big meeting for that. That is my recommendation for that. Is that okay? Any comment on this proposal?
So for the working group, it will be the invitation come through the Raptor MOU, the CMS. Okay, so it should be come through the government, but it should be clear that who's involved in this working group, that it should be more from a scientific background of that. So to be clear it in this. And the other question, so normally it's after the action plan is being developed, it's sent to the party first or to the scientific council? To party first. Okay.
Yes, this will be a scientific working group. Of course, signatories will also be invited, or parties to send the experts, but it's a scientific working group. And then when the working group has agreed on the action plan, we will be sent to all the range states for their comments, also those that were not represented in the working group, before it then finalized and sent to the scientific council. And
this is action plan for the Steppe Eagle in Kazakhstan, right? It will be...
No. It's we're talking now, discussing global action plan. No. Don't see on the wall.
So, are you all okay with this process?
Just a quick word. Of course, I'll be very, very happy to be part of this. I was also last time. As you said, right, migration routes and wintering sites. Maybe one of the reasons why steppe eagles are declining is because not only they have problems in their breeding time area, but because they are migrating so far and wintering in not so good places. And about scientific, yes, it must be scientists that are sitting around this table, but not only scientists. I think, again, theory of change. The mission is clear. Stop decline of the steppe eagle. Theory of change is for this committee to define. It will be scientific, it will be policy-based, it will be data-based, and it will be maybe more than that I think should be all taken into account.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to thank you because last 2018 I also am part of this meeting and the Steppe Eagle Action Plan. I agree with the norm to analyze the threats from the different areas like that. First, we all were known about the breeding areas directly in the Kazakhstan and Russia, but might be very important to identify the migration path threats. Yeah, so because CM is a leading agency for that common minimum programs like that. So it's very important to implementation in future when you just showing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alberto. Environment Agency Abu Dhabi would be happy to be a part of this. And as we were discussing that we have tagged one Steppe Eagle in 2009, and we checked the auto migration, and they spend summer in Kazakhstan, and we have tracking data. So Environment Agency would be a part of this, and we'll be happy to provide assistance.
That's very good news. Thank you very much for that. And it would be an example of making available, published and ideally also unpublished data, because if you, there have been cases, and I'm going to cut it here.
Another question?
Sorry.
Also from Saudi Arabia would like to be involved in this, as we have a large number of wintering population of the Steppe Eagle. And so the National Center for Wildlife in Saudi Arabia, which is charge of the conservation of all the wildlife in Saudi. So also I would like to add, we've seen from the photograph, from the presentation, that there are, mortality in the flyway. So it's not only the wintering and breeding, it's also the countries which is in the flyway, especially from the studies which we've seen that there are some mortality during the flyway, so it will be nice to add them in the. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. One way to collect information would be, of course, research on publishing the documentation, but also sending a questionnaire around to ask about population status, trend, and threats, and for each country. So that will be a long exercise, but that's the process. I think.
No, just to say, I think everybody's very aware that a whole life cycle approach is needed, and there's going to be different pinch points throughout the annual cycle. And also, I think as a collective community, we're in kind of a good place in terms of the vulture multi-species action plan review is happening at the moment, so there's lessons being learnt through that process. And you've just completed the sooty falcon species action plan. So there's opportunity to share kind of best practice as well from those flyway approaches.
Okay, I think the discussion on this point can be pretty much. I think we had a resounding support. Any other contribution that you want to? So please send us who wants to be participating. We've selected because there cannot be too many, but please send us the name. Okay.
I think we could ask everybody send your input to us, to the conference organizers. It would be probably the most simple way. One of two alternative ways. If you want, you can do it. You can send it directly to the Raptors MOU, or you can send it to us, and we forward it Raptors MOU as well. Any questions? Any ideas on the global action plan?
I'm getting old every time. Remember something, I didn't bring it all together. I didn't realize that. Anyway, there is before I forget it. I thought that's just to drop it there. There is an issue in the wintering ground of the waste management, and I think this is not being tackled strongly in the vulture species action plan. the multi-species action plan. And I think this is very important because this kind of big gathering cannot be sustained. So I think it will be good to be, think about it from now before we come. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Professor Brack. In effect, having so many birds concentrated in one point expose them to risk. The ratization program can kill hundreds of animals if they are in the same place. So it can be very, very dangerous. And then they are not constant places. They might move and so on. Anyway, can we expect our contribution within 2 weeks? Send it to the Raptor MOU and the organizer of the conference, so then we can check the list, and we will then establish. I will then contact also the range states to provide a proposal for members. Okay, thank you very much. Anything else, William?
Okay, perfect. Thank you. If this subject is over, we can continue with the National Action Plan for Kazakhstan. Of course, I understand many people here are not from Kazakhstan, but I want make some brief outline of all the ideas which we elaborated for this action plan, and maybe receive some reactions, some ideas from you. So, and sorry, but I won't speak Russian again.
So, this is just the content. Of the potential and possible action plan, national action plan. I would like to show it to you and to briefly go through this action plan. And should you have any ideas or objections, or maybe if you have some experience-based recommendations, now is the time for you to help us improve this action plan, this document. So, like any action plan, it must start with an aim and objectives. Then we must include some taxonomic features and parameters of the species, give some brief description and characteristic of the species biology and ecology, including the life cycle, reproduction, migrations, wintering, habitat, feeding, and the usual set of information that we use in order to describe a species. Also, we believe it's important for this action plan to consider the special role of Kazakhstan, a role that it plays for conservation of the Steppe Eagle. I mean, it is right here, but also I think it's important to underscore the special role of the Steppe Eagle for Kazakhstan, because this is the bird that has a very kind of important symbolic meaning for the country and for the people of Kazakhstan. We believe that here we need to introduce some kind of current state of play, situation review, including the national species range, the current state of play, and description and overview of the history of the previous, 50, maybe 100 years, depending on how much info we have. Then we might offer and add some current state of the national population, including some historic background, historic information, and the presentation of the population trends that we expect in the future, given the current situation of the population. Then, I think this could be followed by something that's different, which is the review of the modern legal status of the steppe eagle in Kazakhstan and existing current nature protection measures and conservation measures that the country undertakes already. The next point of the situation review would be actual and potential threats that the steppe eagles face in Kazakhstan, and I think this will be the right thing to do. We also need to include the threats that the species faces during migration, because these are the birds that we want to protect here, and they do not spend all of their lives in Kazakhstan. They fly out of sight of the country, and we have these different flyways. And I think the national plan, even at least at the description of the situation, must also outline and state the threats that exist for this bird, for the species outside of the country. Here's the direct threats or direct factors that we thought of right away. Maybe this list needs to be amended. I don't know whether I should go listing them or you can see them as they are. But nevertheless, the main ones are electrocution on power lines, poisoning, pesticides by both pesticides and indirect poisoning by the vet cures, veterinary medications, poaching. It may not be very significant for Kazakhstan, but it exists. Winterbine kills or collisions with winterbine blades, and roadkill. That roadkill that's not being actually well known or discussed in Kazakhstan, but nevertheless we all know from the previous year's publication that such problem exists in Kazakhstan and that it was quite significant about 30 years ago. Well, I do not think that it has significantly declined in numbers or in volumes, but I have not really. We see the roadkill steppe eagle very rarely, truly rarely. There are other drivers that affect them. There are direct factors that affect the population. And there are the indirect one which we have called the drivers here. So indirect factors, including habitat alterations, which is, again, not the most important one, but an important one nevertheless. Habitat alteration was very significant, was drastic in Kazakhstan in the 50s of 20th century, but there's no room for alteration left in Kazakhstan, but the threat is still there. Prey population depression, depression of rodents that it feeds off, steppe fires, wildfires, and as a framework for all the other threats is climate change, which on one hand model and affect all the other threats, but which is also at the same time a separate threat, for it changes the living habitat and the living conditions for the steppe eagle. So this will be the end of the situation review. Well, we didn't come up with anything else. If you have any ideas, then we could really amend this document. Then the action plan may gradually move on to the actual list of actions. Well, our imagination might have been limited here, but we thought of these ones. Tutorial-based, territory-based conservation, which is divided into establishment and support to protected areas in the breeding grounds, for the breeding grounds. So we probably need a list of such territories, or maybe some generic or general descriptions, characteristics are going to be sufficient, but I think we will need that because action plan is a specific solid document, so it needs a good list. Another clause in this list is the alternative. Territories of alternative protection. not the kind of specially protected areas, I mean, which are outlined in the law, but also some other areas where protection happens, but on different grounds. So I'm talking about the hunting ranges, where poaching is prohibited, is controlled, and where there's no hunting of steppe eagle, because steppe eagle actually is excluded and it's protected in Kazakhstan legally. I do not know whether it needs to be added here. I'm talking this kind of alternative protected areas, whether they don't need it here or not, I do not know. Here as well, the protection of migration stopovers within Kazakhstan. And the types of protection which are adequate needs to be added along with the stopover locations. Well, we do know that the steppe eagles aggregate around the Almaty landfill. And I don't think landfill, I mean, there are a lot of steppe eagles around Almaty and on Almaty landfills. I don't think this is the area that you can really protect by establishing a protected natural reserve. So there are several points on protection of the species in different aspects, such as power lines protection. And what we could include here would be legal requirements, some sectoral standards, and the practice kind of accumulation and the practical protection, such as installation of the bird safe equipment and so on. Similar measures for wind turbines and wind power plants. I think that generally could be kind of gathered at the one roof of an energy sector. The second is the protection of the species on breeding areas in agricultural lands, on actually generally on lands of agricultural utilization. I'm talking about pastures mostly, because Kazakhstan has overwhelming amount of pastures, but in the north of the country we have some big fields where the steppe eagle might need special protection. And here's a separate clause, measures to protect prey population. And there need to be different measures other than establishing the protected areas. So something more, something different than PA. We need to talk about protection of susliks. We need to talk about the ground squirrel and others. I mean, I'm not talking about only these two. I'm talking about many more that the steppe eagle feeds off.